because man's task is to make the earth after the model of heaven. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Man's project is to heavenize the earth. Man is made to transform the world from glory to glory, to take hold of it and break it down and remake it after the image of heaven.
Welcome back to the Reformed Reset, part of Take Hold Studios. My name is Grant, and joined with me is the beautiful weaker vessel, my wife, Ericha.
Listen, y'all, we're just getting over COVID, so this is like we're recovering.
Right?
We're on some medications, so forgive us if we're a little bit loopy.
So if there's anything we say that's amiss, we can blame it on that. And
that's what the world does. We blame everything on COVID. We can too.
Exactly.
Just saying.
And just forgive us and forget it ever happened. All right?
Today's episode is going to be really fun, though.
It is going to be really fun.
I'm kind of geeking out.
This is good. Before we get into that, though, please subscribe to the channel so that you get more wonderful content like this. And leave a comment to help those algorithms. Hit the like button to help those algorithms. We really appreciate it. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please leave a review. 5 stars, of course. Even if you don't like us, please leave a 5-star review. And that'll help the algorithms in the podcast apps. When people are looking for good Reformed content, they'll find us. Yep. So
we have new blogs going up. We have some other podcasts going out.
This is good stuff.
So we're slowly we're getting our life together over here, guys.
Yeah. Trying to think of what else. Go buy merch. Yep. We keep plugging it. I've noticed that the easiest way to get to the store is to just follow the link that's in our description here.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky.
Teespring has got issues. I don't know what their deal is, but the link that I put in the description takes you straight to all of the merch that we've created.
Or you can go on our Facebook page too, and there are links on there as well.
Yeah. So yeah, we periodically post a picture of one of our products in there. So go check that out. And
the holidays are coming up, so go buy merch from us for your friends and family.
Yeah. And I should put it in the description too. Our Advent devotional book that we wrote, Behold Your King, which is a good devotional for your family during the season of Advent. You can find that on Amazon or EzraPress.ca. And that's a great thing to get now because Advent starts December 1st.
If you ship it from Ezra Press, like if you buy it from them, it'll take a little bit longer because it's coming from Canada.
But you're supporting a better cause and not supporting
that's Joe Booth's
Amazon.
Institution in Canada up there. So if you can, which there's plenty of time between now and Christmas, try and buy it from them. Yep.
Then you don't have to give any of your coin to Amazon.
Yep. Which
we all seem to have to do at some point, but if you can avoid it.
If you can put more money in the pockets of Christians, you should try.
Exactly. So, okay, this is going to be a fun episode. We recently have been watching the Hobbit movies.
I mean, when you're sick, what else do you do?
Right. You watch J.R.R. Tolkien movies.
Exactly. Extended editions.
Yeah, and I think this is the first time, at least for me, that I've watched the extended editions. Mm-hmm. And I love it so much more than regular. I feel like I'm getting more money or more bang for my buck.
We are not super like sci-fi nerdy people.
No, we're not big fantasy nerds.
We're not. But we love, like with probably an unnatural passion, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of you out there as well. And I hope a lot of our regular listeners love Lord of the Rings too. But I grew up on it. My mom is like psycho nuts. Like she's a whole nother level. Like
she can speak Elvish.
Like if we're like journeyman, she's master.
Yeah.
Like
she is a top-notch fan, like legitimately. So, but anyway, we were watching the show and we were talking about Radagast because if you are watching Lord of the Rings, and we know books, movies differ. So, like, for the sake of today's conversation, we're talking about the movie, not the book.
And I know a lot of people particularly actually don't like the Hobbit movies.
And you're crazy.
But they did like the Lord of the Rings movies. Mm-hmm. Whatever. I love all the movies and the portions of the books that I've read, 'cause I haven't read all the books all the way through. I love all of it. All of it's fantastic.
Yeah. But we're talking about the movies today.
Yes.
specifically, because
So-
I know it will differ from the actual book. But Radagast's character in the extended edition of The Hobbit really is like kind of zoomed in on,
there's
even just
more there.
momentarily. And we were talking about Radagast and what an interesting character he is. And I'm sorry if you guys don't know anything about Lord of the Rings, but in the story of Lord of the Rings,
There'll be application later, so hang on.
let me just kind of set it up a little bit. There are wizards. And the wizards are kind of like the overseers of Middle Earth. They're sort of like...
There's 5, right?
Yes, I think he said there's 5. But Radagast is one of the wizards. So Gandalf the Grey, who later becomes Gandalf the White.
Right.
And then there's Radagast. And Radagast in the Hobbit movies...
Radagast the Brown.
Is yeah. And his character is so interesting because we know so little about him, and yet he's so pivotal in the storyline of the entire movie,
The
the
whole
entire
narrative of
narrative.
Hobbit,
Yeah. Well, and the Lord of the Rings.
Uh-huh.
So if you don't know anything about Lord of the Rings, guys, this is probably going to be really confusing, and there's no possible way for us to kind of
No, but I think as we
summarize the storyline of Lord of the Rings, though. Like, if someone literally has no concept of what we're talking about, this is probably going to be really confusing.
Yeah, and there's way too much to try to explain.
There's just so much.
But I think just hang on. Like, we're gonna explain his role and character, and then apply it, because we saw that there's an application here in our day-to-day lives, and that won't be lost on you if you don't know who Radagast is.
Well, and I think most people know that the Lord of the Rings is about destroying an evil ring.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that in its very basic form, that's what it's about. It's about this evil ring and the power attached to it,
Right.
and then this group of individuals trying to destroy it and save the world.
Right.
So that's what happens in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
The Hobbit is a prequel to Lord of the Rings, and it's basically talking about how the ring is discovered and how it comes into the hands of the person who's going to later destroy it.
Right. Well, Bilbo. How it gets into Bilbo's hands.
Yeah.
And then it also, The Hobbit shows kind of some of the relationships between elves and dwarves, and I mean, it's all just like the till work.
I have no idea. Husbandry.
It's all the husbanding of the world that is Middle Earth.
Yeah. So anyway, Radagast the Brown has a more pivotal role in The Hobbit than he does in The Lord of the Rings. And Radagast is the wizard, and he kind of takes care of Mirkwood. He kind of oversees the forest.
Yeah.
He can speak with animals. He is sort of, I guess you could say, like a hippie almost. Like,
Well, he's like kind of a witch doctor.
like a shaman, I think is actually how he's
like
described.
A shaman, very like apothecary type person.
Yeah, he
when
looks
again,
over
this
the
is
health
this
of
is
the...
old school, where a village doctor of any society would have been called the same.
In Middle Earth, trees and animals and all, like, those all actually can speak and communicate, and trees come alive. So caring for the forest actually is quite pivotal, because they're alive, they're beings.
Well, and what happens in The Hobbit is the darkness, or the evil, which is Sauron, whom they thought was destroyed and gone, is actually coming back and gaining power. And Gandalf is not like privy to this right away. And what happens, though, is Radagast sees disease and death show up in the forest that he oversees.
Yes.
And at first, he's thinking this little badger, or what is it?
I think it's a
hedgehog or something. Yeah, was just sick or something. But then he it dawns on him, like, this can't be. What does he call it? What does he call it?
Dark magic, or
dark magic, or
yeah, something like that.
He's like, this can't be unless it's and then it sort of dawns on him, like, oh no,
this is dark magic.
This
isn't natural disease. This is something darker.
But he goes and finds out what's going on, and realizes, yes, that Sauron, this evil entity, which is kind of like a Satan figure or whatever, is gaining power, and also kind of gaining the allegiance of all the orcs, and even Saruman,
which is one of the other wizards, the more powerful wizard.
So anyway,
so real quick, once again, this might be really confusing if you have no idea what happens in Middle Earth. But like, so the wizards are kind of ranked in power.
Yeah.
It goes white, gray, I think blue, brown. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think Radagast is
There's no white's better than gray.
Yeah. I think Radagast is the least powerful, or one of the least powerful of all the wizards. And he notices that, like you said, this evil force is awakened in this seemingly abandoned fortress called Daguldur, right? And so this power is awakening, and he makes the connection, I think, before anyone,
right,
that it's the most powerful wizard who's kind of joined forces with the evil. Right. And so here is this, I mean, you're a soldier, so like you kind of get this, but like you're a low-ranking wizard, and you realize that your superior is joining forces with the evil, and like, what do? But you know that it's creating havoc on this little bit of area that you are supposed to be stewarding and watching over, and you're seeing it happen. You're seeing creatures become cursed and dying.
Right. Well, he goes and warns Gandalf.
Yeah, he goes to Gandalf.
Tells him about it and shows him. They meet up, and they talk through it, and then they both go to, how did you call it?
Daguldur?
Daguldur. This fortress, and they both experience that this is indeed happening. But Eric and I were talking about this pivotal position that Radagast plays in the story, because had he not noticed it and spoke up and went and notified those who are on his side, what would have happened, right? You're left wondering, how would things have gone if he didn't do that? Right. And you looked up the character of Radagast, like, was he in the other parts of the Lord of the Rings? And he was, right? He's in
the Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion and in the Hobbit. He's in all of them, but
even though he's not in the movies, he's in the books. Right. But then you saw this thing about
he always plays a very small part.
And you saw people debating over whether he is a main character or a plot device, right? That's the two
so in
competing opinions.
What does that mean for those of us who've been out of school for a while? What's a plot device?
So we were talking about this. A plot device is just something thrown into a story that really doesn't matter at all as far as the overall narrative, but it's used to progress the narrative anyway, though.
To push it
forward. So it's used as like kind of a transition piece in the story. You sort of just throw it in real quick because it will introduce the next thing. So it could be a character, but like in modern day, right, this will be like the shop owner, right? The shop owner does a certain thing, and then that progresses the story because the family of this city is what the story is really about. It's not really about the shop owner. And then after this one moment, the shop owner's forgotten about. Well, he didn't matter, but he was used as a plot device to move.
Like a trampoline, kind of.
Yeah,
right?
It just moves it forward. Spring forward, whatever. And so some people think that's Radagast. He was just thrown in there at this one moment to then move it forward. And we disagree.
Yeah.
And saw kind of an application that can be made with the role he plays.
Well, because the reality is, we're going to get really philosophical here. The
yes.
reality is that most of us will never be a main character. Most of us will just be...
Most of us are not Gandalf.
Or Frodo, or Bilbo, or even...
Samwise?
Yeah, or even any of the dwarves, or the elves. Like, most of us will never be, like, an important, crucial part of the story and how resolve happens. But... on the surface, I mean. But when you look deeper, Radagast is kind of like one of the main characters. Because without him, we would have never known the evil that was, actually the threat of Middle Earth. And because he discovered this evil, the Lord of the Rings happened, right?
Right.
Because of that, Gandalf was made aware of this evil, and Gandalf was already planning for how he was going to destroy that evil. He was already trying to come up with a plan, and he knew, like, evil was afoot. Like, there was going to be a serious war, and he was already kind of playing chess with the powers that be, trying to figure out how to beat the evil.
Yeah.
But it was Radagast who made him aware of it.
Yeah, and I think it's just a few points of application as I was thinking about this when we were talking. We get so caught up today of being, an influencer, having lots of followers, or being the one that writes that book that everyone buys and says, oh, this is a must read, or I don't know, just popularity and celebrityism is such a curse in our culture.
Well, and I think we want to see the fruits of our labors immediately.
Well, that's part of it too. Yes. So what I was going to say about the celebrity thing, though, is like we get so caught up in that when we don't realize that you might actually have more of an impact if you're not.
You might be a plot device.
Right?
Right? But like in a grand sense, that's what we all are.
Well, you may be a major character who doesn't have a major role.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Which is kind of what Radagast is. He's a major character, although he's just kind of here and there. Mm-hmm. But without him, like, tons of stuff falls apart.
Right.
And so what we see in the kingdom of God is that every part of the body has a role to play, and without them, the body falls apart. The body is incomplete. Mm-hmm. And so you may not be the mouthpiece for the whole body, with the one that everyone hears. You know what I mean? But still, without the small works that you're doing every single day that God has prepared beforehand for you to walk in, some part of the body falls apart if you're not walking in that obedience. Mm-hmm.
Well, in the parts of the body that require greater modesty, like the whole body the
privy parts.
Yeah, like we all make that happen. Like, it's important for all of us to work together. But I just loved the idea that we are all kind of Radagast to some sense. Like, no one thinks about us. We're not crucial to the, when the cover for the book comes out, Radagast is not on the cover.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But it was him that played a crucial part in the story. Mm-hmm. And this is what we believe as Christians, that all of us are a crucial part of the story, that all of us are a plot device. We have a little trampoline that God intends for us to propel forward the gospel, which expands the kingdom. Mm-hmm. And that might be just over our little Mirkwood, that we're noticing, hey, there's evil encroaching on our little terrain here, and we need to push back against it. We need to get help. We need to whatever. That might be our role, but we don't understand how Mirkwood actually is a symbol of what the whole world is going to eventually be under that power of evil, right? Like, the evil took hold in Mirkwood first, and then it spread out through all Middle Earth. And as Christians, that's where we're at now. Now we're at that spot where, like, we have a little bit of Mirkwood that we're supposed to be stewarding and lords over, and we see evil happening and taking foot, and it's our job to push back darkness. Yeah.
We would say, first and foremost, your home. And we've been saying that over and over again, and that's, just what we like to apply to whatever
that's
we
where,
talk about.
In the movie, that's where Radagast
that's
even
true.
realizes.
In his little hut.
Yeah, he was in his little hut when he realized, oh no.
But the other thing, too, that we keep talking about this, and I constantly think, is that Christians need to just accept the fact that right now, pretty much everything's falling apart. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. I mean, God's doing that. God constantly, in the Bible, tears down and builds back up. Mm-hmm. And like very James Jordan-y, he would talk about death and resurrection. Yeah. But that's how we reach new levels of glory. We saw Rome fall, but then we saw the church reach a new level of glory as it spread throughout all Western Europe, and Christendom just exploded into the West. And anyway, you see this constantly. And right now we're seeing it in America in many ways, where businesses are falling apart.
I think just Western civilization
Southwest
in
Airlines
general
is falling apart, right?
Let's go, Brandon.
Oh, it's amazing. But like, all these things are falling apart, and the Christian can look at their little Mirkwood and just be like, oh yeah, there's evil, there's things falling apart, and that's all right, because we know we know how to rebuild. We've been given the blueprints to rebuild our homes, our churches, and then the world broadly with the wisdom of Scripture.
Well, and the beauty of it for us as Christians is we don't live in Middle Earth. We live in God's kingdom, right?
Yeah.
So evil has already been destroyed. Like when Radagast comes to this realization, evil was still in power. Like there was still a power and a deep magic that Sauron had. Well, for Christians on this side of the resurrection, like evil has no power. Evil has no foothold here. Satan has been defeated.
It doesn't have the upper hand anymore.
It doesn't, yeah. He's been defeated. So like, yes, he exists. Satan exists. And there actually are real evils in the world still. And we're experiencing that. But those evils have already been defeated. And are, Christ has already put them to bed, so to speak. Yeah. And now it's our job to make sure that they don't come back. They don't, their powers aren't, I'm trying to think of a way to say this where it doesn't sound heretical, that we don't give Satan more power than he has, which I think we think that way a lot as Christians, right? Yeah. Like we think that we can't actually defeat the works of Satan on earth, right? Well, we have this idea that he's just too strong for us and he's going to win in the end anyway.
Well, and technically he is. And the problem that Christians run into is that they think they can defeat him in their own power and their own wisdom in their own way. God's world is always, like God's economy is always sort of upside down because it's not how we would do it or whatever. And what we see in the New Testament is that Satan and his demons have been disarmed by the cross, and the gospel has bound him. So when we talk about Satan being bound during the millennium, we believe he's bound now. And what we believe is that the gospel, the preaching of the gospel, is what has disarmed him and binds him, and no longer is he able to deceive the nations. 2 Corinthians 4 talks about this. Obviously, Revelation talks about this. But now, on this side of the cross, just like Ericha was saying, now through living out the gospel and preaching the gospel, which is foolishness to
the
world, right? That is what binds Satan and keeps that evil influence down and put to bed, like you said. And we just get so caught up in our strategies and our schemes and programs and skills and church planners need to be CEO personality types and all this nonsense. And
what's your Enneagram number? We'll try and get you to plan.
We adopt pagan pagan ways of assessing the height of human productivity and skill and stuff, which is like Enneagram or whatever. And we think that is going to defeat evil when God has already given us preach the cross, preach Christ and him crucified, and walk in step with it, right? That's the constant. And
handle your little Mirkwood. Like handle your little area that God has given you to manage. Manage it well, and ask God for eyes to see where evil has taken over. Because there likely is somewhere in your life where Satan does have some kind of sway or hold, and figure out like where that is, and then ask God for the wisdom to be done with that.
Right.
To put it to bed. Radagast, be a Radagast, be you and your coughing.
Sorry.
Be a plot device, if that's what the world wants to call you. But a plot device, though some people look down on it, the snooty scholarly types, is crucial if you're Radagast.
Yeah. Wait, so you believe Radagast was a plot device?
Well, I don't know. Maybe he is technically. I guess he
would have to ask the old Tolkien himself.
Would be, but
regardless, you can be that person who's not going to be on the cover and still be monumental to the story as a whole, right? And we're saying, I think that's exactly what the Bible teaches us,
right?
Is that every single person and every little work that they do, whether it's a mother homeschooling her kids and teaching that kid to add 2 + 2, or a father, lovingly correcting his son again, and the same thing. Or his
wife again.
Or his wife. Yeah, lovingly correcting his wife. Whether it's a family faithfully going to church and being a part of. You know, like there's all these little things that we think
Well,
don't matter, but those are those building blocks.
And we experienced this in real time when we were in Canada. And I mean, a little bit too before then. Like, just the whole COVID thing has the whole world upside down.
Still.
But, like, how counterintuitive is it to go to church during a pandemic? Like, that just seems so counterintuitive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the whole world is burning, it seems like. And then when we were in Canada, quite literally, you could be arrested. We had cops sitting outside of our church.
Yep.
When we were going to
Blacked
Steve
out
Richardson's
windows.
church.
I mean, we blacked out windows
And like literally Steve Richardson would come out and say, hey, just so you know, there's cops in the parking lot. So if they come up to you, just direct them
to me.
Yeah. And you think, wow, that's a weird thing to have your pastor tell you when you go to church on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And all the while, what we really see is Steve Richardson being a Radagast and pushing against the darkness and saying, like, this domain right here, this little Mirkwood, this belongs to Christ. This is his.
Nothing else reigns here.
So we're not going to let the powers of darkness take hold of it. We're going to push back against it. And like Doug Wilson would say, we're going to say, no chance, Skippy.
Yep. Not a chance, Skippy.
No chance.
Yeah, it is a bummer when when whatever's going on in the world seems to be like such a big deal that worship is, I don't know, it's diminished, or I mean, we said it right away when this whole thing happened almost 2 years ago. It was just weird and baffling to see so many Christians just refuse to go to church. It was kind of scary, or there's an uncertainty and stuff. But it's like, with uncertainty and worry and concern in your life, church isn't what you run to.
Right.
And that was just like kind of baffling to us. Like, I mean, whatever's going on in the world, you run to the Holy of Holies, right? You run to the altar. Mm-hmm. And the church is you have to believe this if you believe in the incarnation and the resurrection. Well, the church is the incarnation of God's presence in the earth.
How do you, if we believe that Satan and his works and effects are indeed demonic, it is spiritual darkness and cancer and bad and disease and gross, how do you combat that? You don't combat that in any way outside of offering the truth, the light, the gospel.
Yeah.
That's how you actually would fight against it. And I guess maybe this is where it comes down to, like, yes, we understand there are physical aspects to this. Like, we're getting over COVID right now. Like, we understand more than anyone. It's not fun being sick ever. And anyway, but this is a physical manifestation of a spiritual problem. Mm-hmm. That's really what this boils down to. And I think anyone who disagrees with us is going to come to a different conclusion as to how to fight this. But if you believe that disease and pestilence and an evil government and all these things are actually effects of sin and rebellion against God, and then the only way you actually get over a pandemic is by repenting. Like, that's where you start. You fight evil and darkness, not with a vaccine, not with a face mask or whatever. Like, you fight it with repentance. Yes. That's where you begin, and you beg God for forgiveness. And you can't fight a spiritual problem with physical things, with physical solutions. Our battle is not against flesh and blood, though we just said, like, there's manifestations that are flesh and blood, but to keep it at that level is not to do. It's foolishness. Yeah. Well, and that's the beauty of Radagast's story. Like, right? He brings in this little sick hedgehog onto his kitchen table, and he is trying to do all the physical things to make it better, all of his little shaman tricks or whatever. Yep. And that's when it dawns on him, this is not just a physical illness that this little hedgehog got into a bad mushroom. Yeah. This is something way bigger. This is spiritual darkness. This is something that is actually encroaching on Mirkwood that we can't just push back with, a cough syrup or something. Like, this is, we need something more. I need some cough syrup. I know. Anyway, it's great. If you've never watched the Hobbit movies, do it. I know we're going to get hate for saying that they're great. We love them. And watch the extended edition because there is more of Radagast's story.
Yeah. Yeah, there's more interactions with him and Gandalf in the extended version. It's really good.
It's very good.
I'm telling you guys, it's worth your time.
Yeah. And, this is what's so great about good literature and good art is that it causes you to think in ways and perceive reality in a way that you didn't see it before. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, and Jesus spoke in parables, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like our minds are meant to be engaged on that level sometimes. Like you tell a good story and people understand it in a way that they wouldn't have if you just spoke to them in plain language.
That's good.
So give your kids and your families good literature, good entertainment. Yeah. It is
There's
so
not
helpful.
a lot out there.
It's true.
Take what we got and love it.
It's true.
So, anyway, be encouraged. Be a Radagast. Whether you are a monumental character who doesn't appear on the cover, or you are a plot device, right? Just someone that pops in to move the story forward. Either way, you're part of God's grand story.
Be a Radagast in this particular situation. I don't think Radagast is always a good character, but in this particular scenario.
That's true. He loved he loved smoking stuff.
Well,
in the story. Oh, man, Lord of the Rings is great. Anyway, all right. That's it for this time.
Yeah. Do you need our outro?
I think I can get it.
Do you have it memorized?
Until next time, take hold and reorder creation by first reforming your home.
Oh, you do. Good job.
It's been the Reformed Reset.
But on the basis of grace and on the finished work of Jesus Christ, the project is back and forth, and the destiny of a new transformed world is assured.
We just put the sourdough in the oven too, so I've got like 40 minutes.